It is 1:01. And I call the August 30th, 2024 meeting, the Texas Space Commission Board of Directors to order. Before we begin, I'd request that anybody in the room please silence or turn off your phone. And for those online, if you don't mind muting, that would be great. Norman, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that noise? Sorry.
People joining.
Oh, sorry.
More and more
Like to-
people joining.
Okay. There's probably a way to set that up where it's deep ping, though.
Dr. Nancy Perry Gregg,
Present.
Sassy Doubleby,
Here.
Chair Gwen Griffin,
Here.
Evan Loomis.
Here.
Vice Chair Kathy Leaders,
Here.
Brad Morrison. Here. John Shannon. Secretary Kurt Shireman
Here.
and Dr. Heather Wilson. Ma'am, we have a quorum though.
Thank you. Hopefully Dr. Wilson will join here shortly. All right, so thank y'all for being here today. I have to say, y'all, we are in Texas. I am just so pleased with the progress that we've been making and are continuing to make. Today's meeting's got a few key elements to it that are great milestones and steps in the right direction. The board and our new staff, because it's not just a staff of one with Norman today. You know, we're really building out those processes and procedures that are going to allow us to do the work that we were tasked to do as a commission. So thank you to all who have participated in various and sundry aspects of subcommittees to get us to where we are and where we're going. So I look forward to hearing from our new TARSEC liaison, who I'll introduce here in a little bit, but that is also a significant step as outlined by statute to have a liaison from TARSEC represented at our commission meetings. So first, I'd like to consider approving the minutes from our July 17th Space Commission Board of Directors meeting. There are two sets in the board book. One being July 17th. So are there any questions for discussions, or do the minutes accurately reflect your recollection of the meeting? Give you a minute to take a look. Great. Welcome, John. Thank you.
Dr. Wilson and I were on the other link, I think, for maybe the closed session. So she's trying to find that email to join us.
Okay, great. Thank you, John. Welcome.
Thanks.
So any comments, edits to the July 17th meeting minutes? I will comment and thank Kirk Shireman, our secretary, for covering for me on the fly that day while I was diagnosed with COVID. So didn't want to come this way. So may I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our July 17th commission meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Brad. A second?
Second.
Thanks, Nancy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? No. The minutes from the July 17th meeting are approved. So next we'll consider the July 25th meeting minutes. If everybody can take a look at those. And are there any comments, edits, or modifications? Okay. And can I ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the July 25th meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Kurt. And a second?
I second.
Evan. All right, all in favor to approve the meeting minutes from July
No.
25th, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say no. All right, thank you. Meeting minutes from July 25th are approved. Thank you all. All right, with no further ado, I'll turn it over to our executive director, Norman, for your update.
Thanks, yes, ma'am. A couple of comments for y'all, but I'd like to start by carrying on from the chair's reference to our newest teammates. not to leave out those who have already been part. So you all know Blake and Joseph. They've been very diligent to continue helping us get to today. I'll ask any comments from them, but then also introduce the newest staff members as well. Blake?
Sure, no, just happy to be here. In an interest of keeping y'all confused, this is maybe the fourth or fifth different hat that I've been wearing, but happy to be on board. Thrilled to be here, looking forward to it. It's been a lot of work, it's been a lot of fun, and looking forward to diving in some more.
Joseph continues to keep us all straight as we know, but any comments from you, sir?
I just echo Blake. It's really a joy to work with this committee and this board and this.
So new faces for those online and in the room. We've got with us Aaron Chancellor, the Chief Compliance Officer that the board hired a few weeks ago. So the three newest members of the team, I've asked them just to kind of share the top two things that they're working on right now for everybody's situational awareness.
Well, thanks y'all for the opportunity. Happy to be here. Been a fun, I guess, 2 weeks or so in this role. Won't get too into it and take up too much of your time, especially on the first item, because we'll be talking about it essentially today. So been working a lot with the team on the application for grants. And so that's going pretty well. We'll talk more about it later. Just making sure we're covering our bases statutorily and regulatorily, and also, making sure it's going to be comprehensive and complete and easy to read and easy to fill out. So been working on that, and then also starting to look at the actual grant process, what that will look like, what our rules will look like, talking to other agencies to see how they do it, figuring out what's going to work for us and our needs at TSC, and just figuring out the best approach to successfully get these grant dollars out the door. So team effort on all of them, but happy to do the report out. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we've got Andres, who's joined us as the comms director. So a couple of words from you, sir.
Hey everyone, my name is Andres. I'm the new director of communications. Two things I'm working on right now, probably first and foremost is learning our collective story, where we've been, where we are, where we're going. And then probably on the more pragmatic side is fixing our website. I think the cookies, I told my partner that today was my first board meeting, and she insisted on making homemade cookies. I told her that was wholly unnecessary, especially considering Blake's wife is a professional, but she was having none of it. So please dig in. I'm going to tell her that you ate them all anyway. So it's good to be a part of the team. Glad to be here.
And Sylvia is the executive assistant for the team as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sylvia Anguiano. Excited to be here. Known Norma for a very long time. I guess my top two are getting his schedule in order and getting his schedule in order. That's it. That is my goal. So it can run seamlessly if that's even possible, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Thank you so much.
But thank you for having
Great
me.
to have
Appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, I just wanted to make reference to the next round of hires that we're pursuing to add onto the team. We're working with HR and hope to have those posted and interviews underway very soon. I know Blake and I have got a couple of outputs for it, but top lines of those type of roles: a data scientist, two program management specialists, one specializing in commercial aerospace, the other in military aerospace. Keeping in line with the legislative guidance. A financial analyst, planner, grant specialist, a researcher, informational specialist, and depending on the recommendations that come from Andres, some additions to the comms team for a creative media designer and a multimedia specialist as well. So hopefully here before too long, we'll have a little bit more of a bench to introduce and work alongside. The next topic that I wanted to cover was the budget. So want to remind everybody that the legislature appropriated $150 million into the Space Exploration and Aeronautics Research Fund, or SURF as the acronym. And last November, through work that Joseph, Blake, and others at the governor's office, Adriana and her team helped to arrange, was moving that corpus into an investment account. And I'm pleased to report that Terry Boland, the CFO for the governor's office, has shared that has already earned over $6.5 million. So we're able to operate from that side of the ledger. and not eat into the intent of the legislature to have $150 million available across the state for the various investments that y'all will pursue through the application process. So we'll end the current FY with less than 300,000 taken from that total. And we've got budgeted for the next FY approximately $4 million. So all to say, we're in a healthy position to continue our efforts and still have the full 150 to work from once the application process begins. Next, I just kind of want to go down a list. I'm sorry, this is going to sound like a little ramble, but it's also to make sure that everybody here in the room is aware of the different engagements that we've been having and those that are upcoming. Certainly starting off with one-on-ones, as y'all asked me at the last meeting to engage with each member of the TARSEC Executive Committee. Top line was being able to go down to Houston and visit with Stephanie in person and get a tour at Aegis Aerospace. More recently, I was with Kathy down in Brownsville for their chamber luncheon on Tuesday. She did a great job speaking at that luncheon, and we fielded some questions during a panel discussion as well. Monday, which seems like a lifetime ago, Adriana and I were at the TEDC luncheon that the governor spoke at. And so there was, I was trying to keep score, but I think he probably said space 50 times, plus or minus, in his remarks. Also, recently had time to address the Houston Space Development Corporation. Participated in Fed Supernova last week. Sassy attended. Brad was on one of the panels. Evan was on another fireside chat that he led as well. Got some good engagement with a variety of different logos and stakeholders, and also some one-on-one time with DARPA leadership that was here in town as well. There's been a variety of lunches, including the business executives for national security, the BAHEP Aerospace Advisory Committee, went down to Ellington Field for a briefing with General Whiting from the U.S. Space Command. That parlayed with the recent tour that Brad, Gwen, and I had also at the invitation of Colonel Biff French, as well as the Governor's Military Preparedness Commission office that helped to facilitate that. Got to go down and see Venus Aerospace with Sassy. Gwen and I attended the Texas A&M Space Institute's update that Dr. Curry Gregg and Dr. Ambrose led at the Greater Houston Partnership. Spent time over at Rice University, getting to know their folks at the invitation of Dr. Alexander, also a member of the TARSEC Executive Committee. Kathy hosted Dr. Bonin and myself down at SpaceX Boca Chica not too long ago. Gwen has facilitated a briefing for Dr. Bonin with the Blue Origin folks. Brad, Gwen, and I and Dr. Bonin went down to San Antonio for a site visit at Southwest Research Institute. Very enlightening. A lot of space stuff going on over there. And Dr. Wilson and I met with Keith Graff, also from the Texas Military Preparedness Commission office last week. Texas 2036 has provided a lot of good input to us. Also, the Space Foundation folks who have started to provide some insight on how to organize Space Day 2025 during the legislative session that will take place March 24, if I remember. Thank you, 25th. The team and I have already had the first planning conversation about how to organize those efforts. And then lastly, we were able to receive a virtual briefing from Mike Kincaid with the NASA STEM office on the Space Grant Consortium Fund. Next on the hopper for that topic is a briefing from Dr. Tim Urban at the University of Texas at Austin. I believe we've got that scheduled for Monday, if I remember correctly. So in addition to other upcoming visits, Brad and I will be out in Midland next week. We're going to take a tour at the spaceport there. Also, still sticking with the theme of West Texas, Dr. Bonin and a group of us will be going out with Gwen to do a site visit at Launch Site 1 in Van Horn next week. Space Center Houston leadership has extended invitations to come get briefed from them on the latest and greatest underway. Thanks to Evan, I've got a visit, I believe, in a week over at Icon here in Austin with the other Evan. So thank you for that connection. Some speaking engagements. Both Blake and I are trying to not do double duty and go to different places. So he's on the hook for a panel with Texas EDC up in Arlington. I believe, if I remember correctly, I'll be at Y Texas Summit also in Arlington. An invitation from the Texas Association of Manufacturers. Adriana, I'm glad to go down to the Laredo Economic Development Group to visit with them next month as well. Gwen's facilitated time with Dr. Bonin and I with Apex Defense and Space. And then cherry on top is after the Fed Supernova last week, the Australian Space Industry Delegation has got a trip scheduled to Houston next month that they're organizing some time for some of us to engage with them as well. So all to say, a lot of engagements have been underway, and I'm thankful for some other folks to help talk to people along the way. So the team and I will continue to meet with folks as quickly as possible, but I'm happy to take any questions about that or anything else I mentioned. Otherwise, that's my report, ma'am.
Any questions for Norman? Great report. Thanks for sharing. It gives us a breadth and depth of kind of where the interest has been. These are all folks that have invited us to come for visits or have expressed a desire to sit down and visit. So we want to continue to do that as we really learn about the space ecosystem as it exists today here in Texas, but where we also want it to grow. So thank you. Thanks to all willing to go do those things. So House Bill 3447, which I know you guys know forward and backward now. There's lots of aerospace research references in there. I just get tongue-tied every time I go through it. But it does require that the Executive Committee of the Texas Aerospace Research and Space Economy Consortium, or TARSEC, designate a liaison to the Texas Space Commission. So in their inaugural meeting, which was August 12th, TARSEC appointed Stephanie Murphy of Seabrook, who is the CEO and executive chairman of Aegis Aerospace, as their liaison to the commission. And Stephanie is on with us today. Stephanie, thank you for joining us remotely. I'd like to turn it over to Stephanie to provide an update about the work that they've accomplished just in the last few weeks. So over to you, Stephanie.
Right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. I got a nod there. Yes. So as Gwen mentioned, we had our very first formal meeting less than a month ago. We have had 3 formal meetings since then and are kind of working on a weekly cadence right now as we organize. So I do have a couple things to report out and keep you aware of. So first, we selected the liaison. Lucky me, I get to be here with all of you. So I appreciate that. We've also adopted a set of bylaws so that we have a framework for how we're going to work as an executive committee. So we've adopted those at our last meeting formally, and we did some officer elections. So for your awareness, we have a chair, a vice chair, a treasurer, and a secretary. I was elected as the chair, which is just sort of fitting with the liaison role. Brian Friedman was elected as the vice chair. Our treasurer is David Alexander of Rice University, and then our secretary is Jack Fisher from Intuitive Machines. New positions, we just got that done at our latest meeting less than a week ago. We have been busy, to say the least, working on some of the deliverables we have to the governor's office, as well as trying to organize exactly how the consortium will bring members in. So we have our next formal meeting this coming week on Tuesday. In that meeting, we're going to be reviewing a new draft memo of cooperation, which is between the Office of the Governor and TARSEC. That memo really lays out the framework for the appropriations of funds to TARSEC, gives us a framework for that. So we've just got a draft of that this week, and we'll be reviewing it as an executive board on Tuesday. We've also drafted a memorandum of understanding between TARSEC and Texas A&M. What we expect that to cover is the support staff that we may need and the resources that we may need to operate the executive committee and the consortium at large. We expect that to be things like administrative help, setting up conferences, setting up meetings, industry days, those kinds of things that we're anticipating. So that's also in draft form. We had kind of a subcommittee working that. It's being reviewed by the attorneys at Texas A&M right now, and we're hoping to get that adopted in the next week or two so we can move forward with some other things. We're also drafting a draft set of rules for membership applications. We know that there are many people eager to join the consortium, including public and private institutions and private industry. We've been keeping a log of people who've reached out to us in the meantime until these rules are in process. And I know last week Blake Calvert sent out a note on behalf of TARSEC to public and private institutions across the state. So there is an email address that he asked those folks to respond to. And he's collecting those on our behalf till we get our membership organized a little bit better and turning those over to us in a couple of weeks. And then finally, we're just continuing to work on our strategic plan and our deliverables that are due to the Office of the Governor at the end of the year. So we've invited Norman for a discussion. This coming week, we have a couple of questions related to our strategic plan and the framework for that. And then we expect to have a meeting in a few weeks upcoming. Brian Friedman is organizing with Representative Bonin. And so we're just trying to stay engaged with the right folks as we move along and take some temperatures along the way. But I think for 3 formal meetings in just a couple of weeks, we've made some great progress so far.
Wow. Thank you, Stephanie. And I would say that you really have. So we appreciate the work and thanks for the overview of what's accomplished. We look forward to hearing at our next meeting all the great new things that you're doing. So thanks again and welcome aboard. And now we've got 2 subcommittees that we're going to report out today. First topic is our funding process subcommittee. And 4 of those members 4 of our board members serve on that subcommittee and have been working with staff. I like saying that, with staff, to draft a grant application form and to outline the application process. Thanks to Sassy, Evan, Nancy, and Brad for your willingness to roll up your sleeves and make that happen. Kind of core to what we're going to be doing. So Nancy, if you'll please provide an update on subcommittee activities, and please anybody on that subcommittee, please jump in.
Sure. Thanks, Gwen, and thanks for the background. So as everybody remembers, on 17 July, this board voted to establish a subcommittee to talk about the processes that should be put in place for facilitating the Space Exploration Aeronautics Research Fund, or SERP, and that's what I'll refer to it from now on. So the subcommittee received 4 options to consider. We really discussed 4 options and variants thereof. And we want to, set a really high standard. While we want to move out and do this expeditiously, we want to be very mindful of the importance of this grant application process. So we looked at different examples used by other state grant programs, including the Texas Semiconductor Innovation Fund, which was recently established and is administered by the Economic Development and Tourism Division of the Office of the Governor. We also looked at the Defense Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant administered by the Texas Military Preparedness Commission at the Office of the Governor. And then we also looked at CPRIT, Cancer Prevention and Research Institute of Texas, governed by the Texas Health and Safety Code. So we looked at a couple of variants of how this process was stood up in the past, and then used that as kind of a starting point. So for situation awareness to the public audience, including our colleagues at TARSEC, so Stephanie, you can take this back to TARSEC, and to reinforce alignment among the TSC directors. In terms of the next step on the evolution of our SURF application, I want to encourage all board members to have a candid conversation about the draft document that was shared with each of the ad hoc work group members. In particular, there's been some discussion perhaps about whether or not we should have 2 separate applications. One for quote governmental entities, and by definition in statute that includes institutes of higher education. Another one for businesses and nonprofits. So one of the discussion is, instead of just having a singular method of putting in a request, that we should really kind of have 2 major buckets. So based on how our conversation ends today, the board should give our team new guidance on what changes they would like us to make on the draft document so we can finalize it, get it posted, and get this process that many, many people are asking us about throughout the state of Texas and beyond. That concludes my report for now.
Thank you, Nancy. So I'd like to open it up for discussion, and maybe starting with the thoughts around two applications or any other things that come to mind.
What was driving that, Nancy? I mean,
I think
why were you thinking?
wording, and I characterize it this way. It's maybe not so much, and Heather certainly weigh in on this. In my mind, it's not so much academia versus industry or versus nonprofit. I think really it would be some difficulty for lower level TRL type of research to answer some of the current questions. So, which could be done by anybody, quite frankly, more typically done on the academic side, but
Yeah.
so it may be that we, and I don't know how you characterize, draw a line at a TRL level, but you know, that is one methodology that could be used for higher level TRL projects.
Do you know what TRL is?
I'm sorry, technology readiness level. So technology readiness level runs from 1 to 9, as most people are familiar with. 1, which is fundamental research. You know, how do things work? All the way to 9, which is it's ready to go today. It's ready to be mass produced. It's ready to launch into space. And that's kind of the spectrum. Usually where industry gets involved a lot is that transition in the TRL 4 through 6 range kind of pouring over, because sometimes initial assessments don't look at the manufacturability, the reliability, and therefore what is the economic repercussions of this. And I think that's where people think that the current proposal, some of the lower TRL, which again will probably be more associated with academia, but not exclusively, might have a hard time answering some of those questions with respect to the marketability and things like that. So I'd welcome a discussion about that.
I think, Nancy, what you're saying is true in respect to TRL level, low level TRL. That kind of application process probably is going to look a lot different than an already established commercial entity that is pitching to us. I would also offer that an infrastructure project request might look different from an innovation or research and development kind of request. So we might even want to distinguish somehow, some way between those two types of applications. And again, I don't know how we do. Yeah.
Hey, just to jump in there, Brad, it's similar kind of reaction. Some of the information you're going to want in a research proposal will be quite different from the information you want to assess an infrastructure proposal to support, launch operations. And even, a third piece is workforce development or certain support to attract a federal mission to Texas. So we need to be probably flexible enough and not have people look at that and say, oh, well, they're not looking for someone like me. I'm just a small innovative company with 20 employees that's growing to 50, but they're, so when we really do want them to apply. So there may be a way to just explain it at the top, use section A if, use section B if, but feel free to add additional information if you want to, so that we don't discourage, but we also we'll get a lot more on a research proposal, I think, and we should, than on, for example, a straightforward infrastructure proposal and cost per square foot.
I kind of like to use this if you're here, use this if you're there, and if you don't fit any of those, call us, right? Maybe that's the way to do it.
Ideas are welcome.
Yeah. Hey, if you don't fit, but you're still interested, call us.
That's right.
And I was curious though, do you envision, I was going to say bucketizing, allocating funds to the various buckets, or would you envision a big bucket, which then you could take the
the grants, and I mean, or maybe you didn't even discuss that. I was just kind of
We have
curious.
not discussed that particular aspect so far, not knowing what's out there.
Yeah, maybe that's something that we do as it matures.
And I think that might be in alignment with the strategic plan as well, in terms of priorities, maybe.
Other topics, other threads? As we look at our application.
But it sounds like through this discussion, though, it's not just two kinds. It may be that we need to have a really flexible application process.
I do like the idea, you know, if this is a workforce development, answer the following series of questions. I think maybe we can mold one application for
Yeah.
multiple, by directing them. And then again, I think it's important to have a one that we didn't think of, perhaps.
Yeah.
So it's also my understanding that the subcommittee is going to be working with staff to clarify a few parts of statute, just some things that we need to take a look at and really create a definition for as we work through this. So what I'd like to just ask, this does not require a vote at this stage, but thank you for the update, Nancy. But if staff is, or if the board is comfortable with staff making some modifications to a draft, and as soon as ready, let's get something posted for the application so that the public can begin, those that are interested can begin to look at what we're looking for. Get it out there. Okay, sounds good.
Well,
All right. So our next subcommittee topic for today is around our strategic.
Ma'am, sorry, maybe Dr. Wilson had another comment before we move on.
Nope.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I'm about to turn it back to Dr. Wilson here in just a second. So, Dr. Wilson, would you like to provide the update on the actions of the strategic plan subcommittee since your last presentation?
Thank you. Happy to. So the subcommittees met several times, and then these alternative subcommittees have also been focused on the strategic plan. As I reported last time, there were 4 areas that we initially focused on to accomplish the overall goal. Creating enabling infrastructure. So that might include immediate capital equipment to attract companies to Texas that can't be found elsewhere. As an example, thermal vacuum chambers, wind tunnels, and so on. The second one was advancing discovery and conducting high-value space-related research. And that actually is right from the statute. That is one of the things the fund is intended to do. But then it's a question of what kinds of things might best do that. Is it seed funding? Is it research enhancement grants? Is it direct competitive research? And if so, how are we going to assess that? The third was to attract and retain important federal space missions. Obviously, NASA is one of the most important and prominent examples, but there's also the U.S. Space Force. There is NOAA, and then potential opportunities there with the federal space missions. And finally, ensuring a favorable regulatory environment. So reviewing state regulations on everything from reciprocity for licensure for Defense Department assignees to partnerships with the FAA and Aerospace. Since that time, we have the ad hoc working groups have taken a look at the strategic plan. One of the things that came out was a real need to do a statewide scan of the space exploration ecosystem and looking at particular sectors, everything from launch operations to satellite operations, lunar exploration, supply chain, just what is the landscape currently that we can build on. And then some more ideas, one of the hard things I think on strategic planning, and we're kind of at that messy point, right, where everybody's engaging, but it's like making maple syrup. You got to keep boiling this thing because we have to decide what we're not going to do. And maybe it's just what we're not going to do now. What are the highest priority things given the limited time and resources that are available? But there are some things that are coming out of this Unfortunately, that's a longer list than the original 4, but maybe they're tighter in the way they're presented. But working concertedly with national security and intelligence communities and military service branches to try to demonstrate and attract those missions here. Working collaboratively with the federal agencies. Again, that's more of a kind of tactic, but it's also important to understand what their needs are systematically so that when federal missions become available, Texas is the most obvious place to put them. The partnerships with local governments on stacking opportunities, state and local level programs so that might benefit companies. This is a collaborative effort. Again, a tactic there to work through. Private business partnerships, so retaining companies currently operating in Texas. Again, you're not really getting to what we need to do with them in order to do that, but just highlighting that it's important. Skilled workforce, but we haven't really identified exactly what skills are required and are missing. So again, we've got some general things, but we're going to have to get to mechanisms fairly quickly. And then supporting critical infrastructure for space exploration launch sites. Very important for Texas, both on the coast, but also in West Texas from the Van Horn site, and just overall, what's going to be required not only today, but in the future, and how can Texas enable that? And then finally, advancing scientific discovery through high-value space-related research. That's one where the structures are more in place and where higher education has a fairly well-developed processes for putting forward research. On our side, we've got to figure out how we're going to evaluate proposals because we don't really have that indigenous capability, if you will. So I would encourage everyone to continue to provide some comments to Norman. Fortunately, we now have some communications folks to be able to help to shape this and try to make sure that we have ultimately a strategic plan that provides guidance and informs budget decisions. And with that, I think that's all I have.
I'd like to open it up for discussion from Drexel.
I was just gonna add, I had a chance to talk with a number of companies, that I had a relationship with, and the Johnson Space Center. And actually, we got quite a document from the Johnson Space Center. But so we're getting input, but I think I'm with Dr. Wilson. It'd be great to get some broader communications, to get broader impact than just from individuals, but some really interesting ideas that we'll have to sort through and check out the art of the possible, perhaps the art of the legal in some cases. So we'll look into that too. But really, I'm just amazed by some of the ideas that we're getting. And if it can't make it in this time around, there's a chance we'll do it next time.
Other comments?
I think we had discussed the idea of maybe a community forum of presenting what some of the current ideas were and getting community feedback. I don't know if that's a virtual forum or physical forum.
Yeah, I think the intent, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on board here, our goal or milestone was to have a draft available by October for public comment and input. So I feel like from what that report, Dr. Wilson, thank you for the highlights there, that we'll be in good shape to do that and to make that available. And that might be an opportune time, Kurt, for others to provide input. And I don't know, that is kind of a question for staff of how we might want to accept input. Is there a standard, a best practice for how we might do that?
First off, several of those different site visits that we've made, I can share, folks have been following up and sending material in. So it's been
Good.
hodgepodge, and they're not all in. In my mind here in the next week or two, after everybody that we've recently visited with, I keep reminding them if they'd like to share stuff, to Mr. Shannon's point, that we'll organize that into a book for the board, but not a board book like at the committee meetings, or these board meetings rather here, to give y'all some access and direct insight to those documents that they're on their own providing. And separately, back to the website, we've mentioned a couple of times trying to have a portal, if you will, for people to upload and share materials. So that's on the list for Andres to help us work through, and like we'll make sure we get through the procurement process, and Aaron and Joseph will make sure we get all of the legal forms made correctly so that we can have that resource on the website as well.
Okay, great. So in my mind, it sounds like we're in good shape to make that October date, if not before, the input, and then get some public comment. As you recall, by the statute, we're required to have our first plan complete and available before the end of the year, the calendar year. So any other?
I have one more question. How does TARSEC give us input on that, or do they?
That's a good question.
They certainly can either organize briefs. Stephanie, as the liaison, in my opinion, also is the continuous conduit. And if there are activities organized by TARSEC that they'd like to invite the board to be aware of, this is when we'll be careful through legal guidance on participation. But the listen and learn mode, I believe, is safe. It's the conversations that need to not occur in order for conflicts not to arise. And so if TARSEC is organizing activities that they'd like the board to be aware of or attend or get some readouts from, et cetera, then that's the conduit that I would imagine as a process now.
Okay.
It seems like we could have, much like we had a subcommittee report out here, same thing could be done there, right? As long as we're right, as long, we would avoid a quorum, I mean, a TARSEC.
Yes, sir. So if TARSEC had an event that they wanted y'all to hear about, is that the question?
Yeah, so I mean, the information could be provided to TARSEC, it seems like, right, just
Sure.
like it's done here.
Sure.
Like they have a lot.
We wouldn't
more
deliberate on the
liberty to-
strategic plan there, because that would
Right.
be outside a public meeting, but
Right.
there's no reason why that, hey, here's our draft, send your comments to this, and obviously with a little explanation of what's in the document.
I'll make one reminder that the statute does call for TARSEC to issue their own plan with very specific deliverables and the like for this board as well. So it's not meant to be a duplicative effort.
No, I was just thinking about it as a source of input.
Surely.
Into our
Yes, sir.
strategic
Yes, sir.
plan,
Yeah.
not as,
Yeah.
not as unified.
I'd recommend that they be,
I thought that's what you were asking.
That is exactly.
I would recommend that maybe they are giving us, and they're giving this board information rather than this board sharing information in that direction.
I probably stated it wrong. I was thinking that we could solicit information from
Oh,
TARSEC.
surely.
And we would go to a TARSEC meeting, someone would go to a TARSEC meeting with the express purpose of soliciting information.
Roger.
That's what I was
The
intending
listening
to say. I just
session, we
didn't
go.
say it very clearly.
Copy that.
So there's no reason, I was wondering if the strategic planning subcommittee could go and solicit input there.
The answer is
And among other places,
Yes, sir.
obviously, but that's what I
Certainly.
was.
Joseph, any thoughts on that?
Sounds good, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So in that October timeframe, once this board is happy with it in such a form that we could go solicit inputs publicly, then we could take it there if they were interested, if StarSec was interested.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, that's a great idea. Other thoughts on strategic plan or comments? Or any add-ons, Heather? Dr. Wilson? Okay. All right. Okay, so next up on the agenda is some time for public comment. I'd like to ask, thank you for all of you that are here today. We appreciate you being here and your interest in the commission. If there are any comments, please limit those to 3 minutes, and we'll start here with those in the room and then over to those online. And for those online, if you'll please raise your hand, the little hand raising icon, feature in Teams, and then we'll call on you. So, yes, ma'am, if you could state your name and.
Yes, Sarah Mechon with Nate Management Consulting. Since you mentioned secret, I wanted to find out how you guys are going to prevent showing inappropriate behavior from the funds that are handed out, because they got into trouble maybe several times. giving money out to people and them not doing what they're supposed to do. And then the other is, not being appropriate use of funds.
I'll just start with that I'm not familiar with the organization that you're referencing here. But that once we finish the process, which is what we're working on right now, that we will clearly outline that, how we will handle that as the Texas Space Commission. So unfortunately, I don't have a detailed answer for you today, but that is part of what we're working on right now.
But we are already addressing recusal process for conflict of interest. And legal firm,
was the first
the
activity.
compliance officer will keep us very, very straight on that. Yeah. So we are being very diligent about that, and we'll be.
And also I invite you guys to the New Worlds Conference in November in Houston.
Thank you. I spoke last year here when it was at the Bullock Museum. It's a wonderful conference. Thank you.
Which conference it is?
The New Worlds
Okay.
Conference that the Earthlight Foundation puts on each year. Yeah. And I'm glad it'll be at Space Center Houston, if I recall. Very good. All right. Thank you. Other questions? And any hands raised on Teams here? Okay, we've got one. It's just a minute. Okay, so you should be live if initials HS could identify themselves and please ask your question. Comment. Thank you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, board. My name is Hunter Singh with Northrop Grumman down here in Houston. Was kind of a question and a suggestion, but whether or not you had a plan for a library, sort of a repository of information that you collect over time that could be referenced by the local community as a valuable go-to source for plans, projects, innovations, or whether you thought that would be best hosted by another entity.
So you're posing that as a question versus a comment. I think that would be something we will look to our communications team to address as we begin to shape what is useful and helpful and appropriate on the commission website.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hunter. Any other questions or not questions, public comments? I'm sorry.
And just one note for all commenters, that it's not necessarily time for a Q&A. It is more of a time to please, you mentioned it, Gwen, but giving comments for us to write down. We're certainly noting all things mentioned.
Yep.
Janice?
Okay. JD initials. If you'll identify yourself and open it for comment. Looks like you're muted. Janice Dean. Janice, unfortunately, we can't hear you. It looks to us like you're muted. Okay. Looks like we have another hand up. We'll move that way and Janice can move. Okay, Scott Randall, I believe it is.
Yes, I'm wondering what provisions you'll have in the strategic plan, and particularly related to the current grant round funding, to ensure that there's this link or this hook to a continuing effort beyond the current grant. In other words, setting up this grant not as a one and done kind of a activity, but having each grant be the start of something that could continue beyond and be funded again in a larger sense. Do you have any thoughts in that area?
Yeah, I want to bring us back to that we're not in a Q&A session.
We can't do back and forth. We can certainly take comments and listen to
Okay.
the ideas that are presented.
So do you have a suggestion maybe?
Right, so yes, Scott, if there's a suggestion you mentioned, if you want to restate the comment
Right.
about starting, a grant starting.
Sure, I'm thinking about the idea of a pilot project for a longer term program. I'm thinking of the idea of some kind of a structure that would allow for continuing maybe other sources of money in the future, private investors, maybe being involved with the Texas Space Commission, something like set up of a foundation, for example, as part of this, with a look to the future, doing something to, again, set up this not as a one and done activity, but as a lead in to something that would be continuously funded. And again, two areas might be, one might be considering this as a pilot program grant. And the second is considering as part of this, maybe setting up a foundation.
Okay, great. I think we've captured those notes, so thank you very much for the thoughts or the comments, Scott. Any others, Cody? Okay, Nancy McGee. Looks like you're on mute.
Thank you. I'm Nancy McGee. I'm a retired district STEM administrator in Texas, and I would like to urge the commission to look at providing funding for support for K-12 schools to develop programs, and also to partner with higher education organizations to provide dual credit and opportunities for more students to get into space.
Got it. Great. Okay, thank you, Nancy. Appreciate the comments. All right, any more, Cody? Dr. Jaffe. Are you, Dr. Jaffe, are you there?
Yes, thank you. So this is Dan Jaffe at the University of Texas at Austin. I have a suggestion for the people making up the application proposals based on the experience I've had with many of these kinds of competitions, which is to start with the evaluation rubrics, write the evaluation rubrics for the various types of proposals, and then to write the questions that go into the proposal form. That's often a much more effective way to go about it.
Thank you, Dr. Jaffe. Appreciate it. All right. Did anyone come back? Looks like that's all the questions. Sir, back to the room.
Yes, Jason Hath, I'm over at UTSA. Pleasure to be here with everybody today. And this, I hesitate to mention this, but just in abundance of caution, Dr. Jaffe mentioned the rubric. Possibly in that just the brief discussion that we heard, consider what about if you don't fit neatly into the university and or industry, but then the combination, or it's perhaps a joint project, maybe us rights and security, or fire life, something like that. Doesn't fit nice and neatly, but advanced infrastructure or whatever it may be. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jason. Okay. Finish my note to myself there. All right. So that will close the public comment section of the agenda. And at this point, I'll ask the directors, is there any other business to attend to today? Our directors on the. Okay, hearing none. This meeting is adjourned, and thank you all for being here, and look forward to seeing you at our next meeting, which we can talk about dates coming up here. So meeting is adjourned at, is it only 1:55? Thank you.
Efficient.